There's no arguing because they agreed with that. Even though the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Pharisees did not agree, they were agreeing on this because this is history. These are things that was written down. So there's no arguments there. And then he says that there was a leader that was going to be called, and we can see that they're going to lead Egypt or lead Israel from Egypt, and that, of course, was Moses. And we can see the history there. He tells the history of Moses, and of course, all of these things are true because this is exactly as history had recorded. Now, not only that, but we can see that as Moses being the leader of Israel, we can see he had kind of a rough start there, we might say, as he was about 40 years old. He had killed an Egyptian taskmaster that had been beating one of the Israelites, and he hid the body. And then, of course, thinking that no one saw him, then the next day there was the argument between the two Israelites, and Moses trying to get them to, kind of get their settlement taken care of, get their arguments taken care of. And then one of them spoke up and said, well, are you going to kill us just as you killed the Egyptian? Well, he knew what the consequences of that was. If you kill an Egyptian, then the consequences would be that of your own death. In other words, so this was the consequences of killing those. And the Israelites, being the slaves at that time, would automatically mean, death without even any trial. And then notice there in verse earlier in this chapter, and I think about verse 25, somewhere around that, one of the individuals who made you to be a judge or ruler over us. We can see later on that God did make Moses the ruler over them. And I think if my memory serves me correctly, that pretty well brings us up to verse 36, which is the verse that we're going to begin with this morning. But let's go back right before that and see that Moses, whom they had refused, because Israel, we don't, we're happy, we just need delivery. And then whenever God sent Moses to deliver them, then they actually rejected him at first, did they not? Who, again, gets back to what we said in verse 25, 26, or earlier in the chapter anyway, that why are you sent to us? That you might be our leader over us? Well, we've seen you as being in the king's palace. You're called the daughter of Pharaoh's daughter. The son of Pharaoh's daughter. And you have this authority. So they did not respect Moses at first, did they? And we can see, even though he'd been called by God in the burning bush and all the things that transpired from that. And then notice something else that he says here. He brought them out after that he had showed wonders and signs in the land of Egypt and in the Red Sea and in the wilderness for 40 years. First thing, the signs and wonders that he's talking about here, we can go back into the book of Exodus and see that these signs and wonders were the plagues that was brought upon the Egyptians. Question: what was the first sign that God gave to Pharaoh to let my people go? What was the first sign that Moses and Aaron had the power from God? Man? No? Huh? All right, the rod. That's exactly right. If you remember, one of the things, first thing, whenever Moses was confronted, God confronted Moses, go and lead my people. Moses said, I'm just not an eloquent individual, so send somebody else to do that. But God said, you're going to do it, and Aaron's going to be your spokesman. Well, what am I going to tell Pharaoh that he should be should pay attention to me, because I remember I was brought up in this household. He knew the different aspects of the law as far as the Egyptians were concerned. First thing, God told him to say what? I am that I am. I am all that I need to be. I'm the creator. I'm the giver of life. And we can go back to Genesis 1 and 2 and see that is true. And also in John 1. So as they're having this discussion here between these two, and they said, there's another sign you're going to see, or you're going to be aware of. And he said, what is that in your hand? He said, it's a rock. He said, cast it down, and it became a serpent. What did the magicians of the time of this time, what did they do as far as Pharaoh's house or Pharaoh's?
They had rods, and they threw them down, and they turned serpents. But Moses serpent.
All right. So again, the power that God had over the power of the Egyptians. Now, another thing we need to keep in mind is seeing all these signs and these wonders. Now, the 10 plagues, we're not going to go into them, but all these plagues that was brought upon there, they were amazed at that. Not only that, but where did the plagues come upon the Israelites? No, only the last one did. But as far as the plagues, all the other things that took place there on the Egyptians, not on the Israelites. And then notice something else. After all of these signs and these wonders, because they couldn't explain them, these were the gods of the Egyptians, and they were worshiping them, and all these things are transpiring around them. What happened? Did you begin to doubt their gods could control these things? They were in a loss. How can these things be? These supposed to be our gods that we're supposed to be appeasing, that we're bringing gifts to, and that we are offering sacrifices, and now they're turning against us. That was their concept. What's going on? And then after the last plague, which is the death of the firstborn, we can see they have left Egypt now, and they're headed to the promised land. What's the first obstacle that they run into? Red Sea. And again, here is the Israelites seems to be an individual that they're kind of like a wishy-washy. In other words, 1 minute they're for you, and the next minute they're against you.
Going their way, they're fine, but if it's not, like I'm fine.
And sometimes even if it's going their way, they don't like that either. But anyway, they come to the Red Sea, and what's the first? Well, you brought us out here. Here's the Egyptian army coming out. Here's the Red Sea. We can't cross it. It's in flood stage, and it's impossible because all these thousands and thousands of people that are here, they're surely going to be slaughtered. And he said, stand still and see the power of God. And they did. They saw the power of God, and that the waters parted. They crossed on dry land. It is estimated by history that it took several days for all these people, the animals, and all to cross over into the promised land, to cross the Red Sea. And we can see also that during this time, what did God do? Held them back. And so they couldn't go any further. They had to stay right where they are until this time, or when all the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. Then here comes the army, thinking they could do the same thing. Of course, we know the story of that. Now, this brings us there in verse 36. And during all this time, they wandered in the wilderness for how long? For 40 years. Okay. Now, again, this was not intended, but what happened to Israel? What did they do that caused them to wander in the wilderness for 40 years? This is a short. If you look at, well, you can look at the maps. Okay.
We just might as well give up.
All right. What's the problem? A lack of faith. All right. Not long after this, they come to Mount Sinai. And I think this is one of the things in verse 37, this is that Moses which said unto the children of Israel, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you of your brethren, like unto me, him shall ye hear. What reference is that? To Christ, okay? And this we can see a little bit later on was spoken and became true there in Matthew 17 and also in John 1. Now, as these things are taking place, again, Israel is they're just unsure about what things to do. On Mount Sinai, let's talk about, well, I think the next verse is not. This is he that was in the church of the wilderness with the angel spoke to him in the Mount Sinai and with our fathers who received the lively oracles to give unto us. Now, this is Stephen talking, telling them these oracles were what? The 10 Commandments of the law. All right. Now, while Moses was receiving these 10 Commandments, what was Israel doing?
Making merry and putting on all their jewelry to make it gold hat.
Okay. Notice in verse 39, and we'll go back up a little bit. To whom our fathers would not obey. Now, all these laws was given, they still wouldn't obey them, but thrust him out from them, and in their hearts turned back again unto Egypt. What did they say when Moses is on the mountain? He's dead. Look at all of, if you remember the story, the record there, the mountain shaking, there's clouds, there's no doubt all this commotion is going on, and anything that was to come to the mountain would surely be killed. And can you almost imagine there's this rumbling, constant rumbling as here is God communicating with Moses and giving the laws and writing these laws down. And while they were on the mountain, what takes place? Oh, we're out here without a leader. What happens now? These individuals who had seen these plagues cross the Red Sea, God had taken care of them. He fed them, he watered them, as the expression may be, take care of all their needs. And now, as they're receiving the laws of God, in sight of the laws of God, we don't have a leader. Moses, you surely did. We've got to have somebody else. So what do they revert back to? Gods of Egypt. It seems that these individuals, even though they had seen all the miracles of God, they seen the power of God, they seem to be individuals that if they can't use the five senses, the touch, the smell, the taste, all these things here, if they couldn't hear or use these five senses, it doesn't exist. Much like people today, do they not? We have to have something tangible. We have to have something that we can place our hands on. Because all this time during the period of time that they were slaves and also living in Egypt, there was this influence that the Egyptian gods had on them. Even though it may be subconscious, seems that it had some kind of an influence on them. They just could not turn away from something that was such that they could hold or they could see or they could talk to, we might say, in that sense. So here it is. It says, your fathers received the oracles of God, and what did you do? They would not obey. Goes back to what Brother Todd said this morning, would not. Here's the law. And Jeremiah, he said, what are you going to do with it? We will not obey. Now, does that kind of sound familiar to people today? If it doesn't, if it doesn't suit me, it's just no. We're not going to do that. And we can also see that during all this time, the things that's taking place and they were aware of that, and they knew that God existed because where did the water come from? Where did the food come from? Their clothes didn't wear out. All of these things. Okay. So they just could not understand accepting these things by faith. What did I believe Paul, being the writer there of Hebrews, what did he say there in chapter 11? But without faith, it's impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that, and there is this faith, because it's not the tangible things. It's not something that we can place here on our table and bow before it. There's not something that we can touch or taste or any of the five senses in that way. But God is a God, a spirit, and we must worship him in spirit and in truth. So there's the difference there, is it not?
We can see the presence of God in the wind, rain, sun, air, we breathe, flowers, trees.
Okay.
Life, seasons, we can see God. So they must be all in.
So here's Moses. He's been rejected now for the second time. Because, what are you doing? And we can see there, beginning with verse 39, that they would not. Listen to verse 40. Saying unto Aaron, make us gods, going back to what we said, make us gods to go before us, for as for this Moses, which brought us out of the land of Egypt. Now they were willing to testify to that. Yes, that's true. He did. He brought us out. But what happens there in the latter part? We want not what he become of him, or what has become of him.
Look at that. This Moses.
Mm-hmm.
The Moses. They just, like he was a spirit or something.
All right. And notice what he says here. And they made a calf in those days, and offered sacrifices unto the idol, and rejoiced in the works of their own hands. Now, I think that's let's go to verse 42 and 43 as well. Then God turned and gave them up to worship the hosts of heaven, as it is written in the book of the prophets, O ye house of Israel, have ye offered to me slain beasts and sacrifices by the space of 40 years in the wilderness? Yea, verse 43, ye took up the tabernacle of Moloch and the star of God Rephaim, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. Here's a prophecy. If you continue in the way you're going, he said, there's going to be a time that you're going to be led away into captivity, and that's by the Babylonians. Now let's notice something. When we talk about the god of Moloch, this was one of the gods that the Egyptians worshiped. This was the Ammonites this is their gods. It's part of, in fact, a little bit later on, I think he talks about the stars. It's an astrological figure to them. And this was also something that was a god that offered human sacrifices. Most of the time it was a human as far as children were concerned. A very cruel way for a child to die. And yet these are some of the things that they did. They was worshiping this type of an idol. But before we get any further, was there any king of Israel that did this? Good question. One of the wisest kings of Israel, Solomon. What? He did that? You got it right. 1 Kings 11, verse 7. Turn over there. Let's see. All right. What does 1 Kings 7, verse 11 say? Or 7 say? Anybody read it? Just don't take my word for it. 1 Kings 11, verse 7.
did Solomon build a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the mount that before Jerusalem, for Moab, the abomination of the children of Ammon.
All right. Didn't quit there. Go to 2 Kings 23 and verse 13. 2 Kings 23 and verse 13. What does it say?
Places
Huh?
were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of the Mount of Corruption, which Solomon, the king of Israel, built for Ashtaroth, the abomination of the Zidonians, and for Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, and the kingdom of all.
So there's a bunch of these gods that Solomon built. May or may not have known that.
Well, he did most every against God's word during his lifetime until he realized, he came back to his senses and realized that God abandoned him.
All right. So later on, we can see there's still this influence that came even in the time of Solomon. So this is a long time that's transpired. They just would not give up their idols. And I was thinking about what he's saying there in Joshua 24 and verse 15, choose ye this day whom you will serve. They just were in a constant turmoil. Well, I want to worship this one. I want to worship this. I want to do this. I want to do that. Instead of staying with the God of heaven, the creator of all things, they were worshiping something that was tangible that could be placed there on the table. And I've always asked, what if you dropped it and broke it? Does that mean that you broke your God? Now you can't worship him. He's broken. No, it doesn't work that way. But these individuals were constantly bombarding themselves with these false gods. They wouldn't turn to the God of heaven. So this is, and like I said, these gods were, well, I say the gods weren't, but the people that worship these gods were very cruel. And many times they would think these were the gods that delivered them from the Egyptians, or these were the gods that delivered them from this or that. No different from the Babylonians, the Ammonites, or the Moabites, or any of the others that God told them to drive out of the land, and they didn't. So they regretted it. So these are all the things that he's talking about. Make us a God that goes before us. Now, who had been going before them? God of heaven. Okay. Who would take care of them? God of heaven. Now, this was history. So these individuals understood it. Okay. Now notice, like I said in verse 41, make us a calf. And that again was the symbol of some of their gods. Molech, they had different kinds of animals that they bowed before. But anyway, make us a golden calf. And notice there, he also said that we could worship, that we could see, that can go before us. And we can see then God turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven. Now, what he's talking about here is this, not the host of heaven in the sense of heaven itself. The stars and the moon. Now, do we have anybody that worships the stars and the moon today? There's those individuals. Oh, that's the most beautiful thing there. You know, that's where God must dwell. And they begin to worship the stars and the moon. Same thing that was taking place back all these years back. Same thing. We have human, it seems that human nature really doesn't change. In every generation, you can see the same thing, just repeats. But anyway, they're worshiping the stars in the heavens. As it is written in the book of the prophets, O ye house of Israel, have you offered to me those sacrifices? And instead of offering them to me, what are you doing? Offering to these false gods. And we can see that they did this actually for a long period of time. All right. So they didn't give them up, even though God was taking care of them. They just would not give them up. All right. Yea, ye look upon the tabernacle of Moloch, the stars of your gods, talking about what we're talking about. The star of your god, Rephaim, figures which ye made to, no, notice that ye made to worship. I will carry you away unto Babylon. And of course, that's what took place. Our fathers had the tabernacle of the wilderness, or the witness in the wilderness, as he had appointed, speaking unto Moses, that he should make it according to the fashion which he had seen, or which God gave to him on Mount Sinai. Let's stop right here for just a moment. Like I said, they were constantly wanting something that they could see, they could touch, they could use the senses in something to worship. So what did God give to them? The tabernacle. All right. The tabernacle was a movable place of worship. And they could, the high priest was to take care of this, and the priest and the high priest. What tribe was they? Or were the priest from? Levi. Okay. So the Levi tribe were to take care of all these things. They would set it up. And then the high priest would take care of the sacrifices and things along this line. Now, we have a understanding, well, a thinking of it anyway, that whenever they made this tabernacle, they would go maybe 2 days journey and set it up, and then maybe 3 days journey and set it up. This is not the case. They might set it up for a week or a month or even more than that in order to have a place to worship. And then they would go again maybe several miles and again set up again. So this wasn't something that they just travel for 40 years. Every day they get up, but we got to go so and so this time, go so many feet. Or so. That wasn't the case. This was constantly stop and start, stop and start. Okay.
God intended for 40 years for those people that were not believing, didn't have faith and trust in what Joshua and Caleb, the message they brought back. All the ones that were older than Joshua and Caleb, they all had to die in the wilderness because of unbelief.
Okay.
The older ones that came out of Egypt.
All right.
Joshua and Caleb.
Okay.
And their descendants were allowed to live.
Right. Okay. Any other thought? Okay. All right. Another question. There in verse 45. Which also our fathers that came after brought in with Jesus into the possessions of the Gentiles, whom God drove out before the face of our fathers unto the days of David. Those individuals that were willing to accept were granted into being children of God, were they not? First off, remember, let's go back a little bit. First off, the children of Israel was given the law. Only the children of Israel. Those who are not the children of Israel, what law were they under? Anyway. What law did they live by? Patriarchal law. That's right. So that was the law that they were giving them. Okay. So they did not have a law. They did have a law. It was not the law like we would, it was passed down from generation to generation. That's what I'm trying to say. But what happened to, you remember when we said in Acts 2 that you're going to be witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, and to the uttermost parts of the earth. Okay. Here's the same thing that Stephen is telling them. These are the things that I told you, or that God already told you before. These were people that had heard probably the apostles, because it hadn't been that long ago, that heard the apostles make this statement. And they were telling them that God is going to accept all men everywhere to repent or to be obedient. And this is what he's saying here. He said, this time has come that all men everywhere can become Christians. Well, this kind of made the council or the Sanhedrin a little bit upset, did it not? Because what were they proud of? We're children of Abraham. And we don't have to worry about it. God's going to accept us just the way we are. And then to say the Gentiles also, those that were heathen, those that were individuals they looked down upon as those who did not have the right to the law of God, you don't have that. You just get out here and leave us alone. You're going to just away with you. And here he says they're going to be accepted into the kingdom of God. Like I said, this kind of made the council upset. This began to kind of gnaw a little bit on them. Okay.
Stephen did not hold any punches. I mean, he put the hammer down and the nail.
Okay. All right.
When he taught the matter, they got.
That's true too. Verse 46, who found favor before God and desired to find a tabernacle for the God of Jacob. But Solomon built a house, or a place of worship. And again, I think we talked a little bit about that as I found that it is 7 years that it took to build the tabernacle. Okay. All righty. Howbeit, the Most High dwelleth not in temples made with hands, as saith the prophets. Now, whenever the temple was dedicated, if you'll remember that the smoke that came from the temple was a sign that God was approving, or God approved it. But can you place God in a temple that was just so big? He said the heavens is his throne and the earth is his footstool. How can you just build something that could contain something like that? Can't do it. Can't be. Okay. So the power of God is seen constantly over and over and over again. And we can see this again as far as the Most High dwelleth not in something that is an object over here, not in a temple or not in a tabernacle, not in an idol, not in something along that line. Nothing man-made. And nothing else can do it. Well, our time seems to have come and gone. Let's begin then, because verse 50 tells us basically the same. Oh, let's go ahead and get verse 50. Hath not any hand made all these things? Who made all these things? God did. What power does man have? We just use them. So we can see, and we want to deal with verse 51 as well. All righty. Any questions? Yeah, whenever. It's just kind of, like I said, they were going along. Yeah. They had a disagreement here. Okay. All righty. Are there any questions? I appreciate everyone's comment. Thank you.